Phil Donahue, Ricky Lake, Montel Williams, Geraldo Rivera, Maury Povich, Steve Wilkos, and Jerry motherfucking Springer. When you think of those names, people, you have just been sent back in time from the nostalgia time machine towards the late 80s and the early 90s and seeing on your television a daytime tabloid talk show, or as I like to call them when I was growing up, white trash television. Especially in the 2000s, that's where you saw the absolute debauchery of white trash TV. But back in the early 90s, especially the early 90s, they were absolutely the shock, rave, and craze. And every talk show was scrapping tooth and nail, limb from limb, going battle royale in an arms race to see which show would get the most ratings. Even if they had to absolutely make their shows as bonkers as possible. But how far would you go to get more ratings than your competitors? How far would you be willing to go even if you embarrassed someone? Embarrassed them so hard on national television that 3 days later after the show, that person would grab a 12-gauge shotgun and enter the home of the other person that was on the show and murder him. This is the Jenny Jones Show murder.
We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be.
Hey everybody, this is Atticus the Death Miller, and welcome to another episode of the Death Metal Historian, aka the bootleg version of Absolute Mad Lads. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about the absolutely crazy story involving the Jenny Jones Show murder. Now, before we get on to the meat and potatoes of the subject, I want to give out the inspirations on why I want to cover this video. Number one, I watched a Netflix docuseries called Trial by Media, and the first episode happened to be this episode of the Death Metal Historian that I am covering. And number two, I want to give a shout out to the YouTuber Leon Lush, who made his video on Jerry Springer and how absolutely infamous the Jerry Springer Show was back in those 3 decades of his career. And it really made me want to actually do a bit of research on this case and make an episode on it. So why not? So without further ado, let us begin. Jenny Jones was born Jania Stronsky on June 7th, 1946, in what was then Palestine. Now I know all of you will be saying this, Palestine? But Jenny's white! And you'd be absolutely correct. But during this time period, a lot of refugees made Palestine home, and those refugees were from Poland. I think you all know why most Poles ended up in Palestine. Her mother, Zsuzsa, was a seamstress and a housemaker, while her father, Jan, was a Polish army officer for the British Armed Forces during her birth. He also survived both Nazi and Soviet imprisonment in World War II, which made her father a very hard and brutal man. Jenny could recall some of the traumatic memories as a little girl seeing both her parents violently fighting.
And it was of my father throwing a table at my mother. And I didn't know why he hated her or why he treated her like that. I just remember that he spit on her, and the spit was kind of sitting in her hair.
They then moved to Italy for a brief time and then moved over to London, Ontario, where Jenny would grow up. Just like any typical first-generation Polish immigrants, Jenny grew up in a strict Catholic upbringing. To make money, her parents ran a bridal shop. Jenny, despite her strict upbringing, always had sort of a rebellious side. She would skip school, where she would shoplift and get drunk.
There were times when I don't remember coming home. How old? 13, 14.
I guess alcoholism does run in Slavic households. Let's all be for real here. Despite all of her troubles being a runaway, she was always looking for a way out. Her early career began as a drummer for a small rock band called the Cover Girls. She would later attempt stand-up comedy in the 1980s. She also made several appearances in The Price is Right in 1979, Match Game in 1981, and Press Your Luck in 1985. In September of 1991, Jenny would then star her own tabloid talk show, The Jenny Jones Show. But we will get to that later. Scott Bernard Amador was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on January 26, 1963. His father, Frank Amador, was a local tractor-trailer driver, and his mother, Patricia Graves Amador, was a housewife. The family moved to Waterford, Michigan, and 2 years later, Frank and Patricia divorced. After his parents divorced, he lived principally with his father, as did his 3 brothers and 1 sister. It was at this moment that Scott would soon discover that
I'm gay.
His older brother, Frank, would later say that he always knew that Scott was gay, but loved him regardless, as well as his father. Which is what any sibling and parent should do. Like, if your child comes out as bi, gay, or trans, like, you should love them regardless. And I'm very grateful that Scott really had some amazing and loving and supporting family, which they were pretty loving and supporting later on this video. At age 17, he quit high school to join the Army, where he finished his GED, high school equivalency, and was trained in satellite communications. While assigned to Germany, he learned to ski and broke his leg while skiing in Switzerland. After 3 years, he received an honorable discharge with the rank of specialist. After working several years in technical communications and telephone type jobs, he became a bartender because he enjoyed working at night. Generous to a fault, he took on several homosexual friends with AIDS, caring for them, while others had shunned him. That's a pretty noble thing to do, Scott. Like, already you are seeing that Scott is a pretty amazing guy. He was gay, he had a loving family, he had a career in the Army, he did a bunch of odd jobs here and there, worked as a bartender, and is working as a mechanic. He was just your typical run-the-mills, middle-class, working-class American that was also gay, but he was a very nice and caring individual. On his many adventures, Scott stumbled across the young Jonathan Schmitz. Jonathan Tyler Schmitz was born on January 18th, 1970. I did not get any info of which state Schmitz was born, but we do know that he was born at that time. Not a whole lot is known about his early childhood, but what we do know was that his father was your typical run-the-mill homophobe. It is also important to know that Schmitz had had a history of mental illness, alcohol and drug abuse, and failed suicide attempts. Just to keep all that in mind. Now, why do I say all this on Schmitz? Scott had feelings for Jonathan, but unlike Scott, Jonathan loved the Bobs and Vagine, not the Peanuts, so it wasn't gonna work out. But somehow, this was enough for Scott to take things a step further and bring him, himself, and another friend, Donna Riley, on a Jenny Jones show. As I stated earlier in the introduction of this episode, back in the late 80s and early 90s, tabloid trash talk shows were the rage at that time. Like, from when I was in middle and high school in the 2000s, I saw them basically the entertainment for literal white fucking trash. But back in the 90s, the early 90s, tabloid talk shows were on an arms race of who was to be the most provocative. For instance, more was all about Guess the Father.
In the case of 7-week-old Andrew, Trevin, you are not.
Geraldo Rivera having battle royales on his stage. And of course, Jerry motherfucking Springer crushing it. Having such musicians like Gigi Allen.
Grab a girl and force her to perform oral sex with me. I've had sex on stage with men, women, and animals, and everything in between. See, the thing of it is, in rock and roll, there can be no limits or no laws.
And Peter Steele. Along with wigs being thrown titties, and midgets beating the shit out of each other while the security does not do jack shit. Also, I think all of you know that Steve Wilkos was head of security on the Jerry Springer Show before he moved on to his own show. And also another fun fact, Jerry Springer was the inspiration for WWE to make the Attitude Era back in the late 90s. And Jenny Jones was part of this tabloid arms race. Initially, Jenny started off traditional, much like that of Oprah Winfrey. Sadly, ratings were getting pretty low by 1993. The show began to steer away from serious subjects to where her contemporaries were going for. Basically, paternity tests like Maury, out-of-control teenagers, sending them to boot camp before Dr. Phil sent kids to the ranch, confronting former bullies, makeovers, feuding neighbors, strippers, and last but definitely not least, secret crushes. And this is how Scott Amador and Jonathan Schmitz tie into all of this. Scott wanted to not only be part of a tabloid show he really liked, but it was also a way for him to confess his deep, secret crush to Jonathan. Not only to him personally, but also on national television.
I'm your boogeyman. That's what I...
Now, which of these ways would you choose to reveal your secret crush on someone? A, would you write that person a letter? B, would you tell the person in private in case he rejects you? Or C, would you tell that person that you're gay and you hope he is on national television?
On March 6th, 1995, Amador, along with a friend, Donna Riley, were taped for an episode of The Jenny Jones Show, in which Scott admitted to being a secret admirer of Jonathan Schmitz, who lived near him in Lake Orion, Michigan of that time. Until the taping, Schmitz was backstage and had no idea who his secret admirer was.
The first time you met him, where was he?
Basically, well, he was under a car, working on her brake line.
Yeah. And that was your first time? What was your first impression?
Well, I only saw the lower half of him, so you can imagine. He was hot.
Okay, you think about you have fantasies about him?
I've had a couple, yeah.
Yeah, you had when he was under the car, you had a fantasy about him.
Yeah, something to do with like brake oil, line snapping, and...
Schmitz stated that he went on the show out of curiosity and later claimed that the producers implied that his admirer was a woman. Thinking that Schmitz was going to get back together with an ex-fiancée, he got on stage to find Donna and Scott.
Well, all right, let's see if he really is. Get the headphones off of John and let's have John come out here and see who has the crush on him. Here's John.
That was where Jenny dropped the bomb on Jonathan.
Did you think Donna had the crush on you?
Did I? No, we're good friends.
Well, guess what? It's Scott that has the crush on you.
You lied to me.
Now, in present day 2021, when a guy that you know that is friends with you confesses that he's gay and has a crush on you, you would be like, you know, I like you, man. I really do like you. I think you're a wonderful dude. But you do know this is not gonna work out. It's definitely not gonna work out because I love women. But I know, man, I know that there's plenty of men out there that would be lucky to have such an amazing and wonderful guy like yourself, Scott. And that would have been the most appropriate response to Scott Amador. But sadly, this was the 90s and LGBT rights were still a long ways to go. Schmitz reacted to the news being visibly uncomfortable as Jenny Pride opened more of Amador's feelings for him.
And Jenny Jones exploits that and keeps twisting the knife and twisting the knife.
Before we talk, take a look at, we'll show a little playback of what Scott said about you, John. Take a look at that monitor
right
down
here?
there.
Well, it entails like whipped cream and champagne, stuff like that.
To not only to a cheering crowd, but also across the country. Jonathan, despite him acting professional and laughing along with Scott, Donna, Jenny, and the crowd, was humiliated deep down. He felt like he was embarrassed and ashamed. What's surprising about this episode was that it did not air on TV, and it's due to with what Schmitz would do 3 days later that not only would cause a tragic event, but also would change the very history of television forever. After the shooting of the show, it was confirmed that Scott and Jonathan went out to get a couple of drinks. Now, it is allegedly known, that Jonathan and Scott did have a sexual encounter right when they got back to Lake Orion, Michigan. Some articles say it's true, while some are not. But what we do know is that Amateurs sent Schmitz a very provocative and sexually explicit letter to Schmitz that pretty much was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, in a situation like this, what you should have done, whether if you had sex with this man or not, was that you would have either called him or drove him to his mobile home to have a serious talking on how things would never work between the two, or the typical don't ever say stuff like this to me again and don't ever contact me again. You know, what a typical and normal person should do. But that's not with what Jonathan Schmitz did. Schmitz, being humiliated and his mind not in the right state of mind, as well as the homophobic ramblings of his father, did the unthinkable. On March 9th, 1995, Schmitz withdrew money from his bank, bought a 12-gauge shotgun, and drove over to Amadur's mobile home. There, Schmitz questioned Amadur about the note in an angry manner. He then stormed outside of his home to grab the shotgun in his car, where he stormed in, pumping 2 shells in Amadur's chest. Scott Amadur instantly died. He was just 32 years old. After the murder, Schmitz left Amadur's corpse in his home, drove off to a gas station where he later dialed 911 on a payphone, confessing to the murder.
Okay. Okay, why did you do that?
Though Schmitz may have been embarrassed by the Jenny Jones taping, it did not justify his killing of Amadur, the state argued. Schmitz drove to one store to purchase a shotgun, drove to another for ammunition, and drove to Amadur's home before firing the fatal shots. That demonstrates premeditation, prosecutors said. According to the defense's theory, Schmitz simply snapped after finding a note on his doorstep. Lawyers attributed Schmitz's reaction to Graves' disease, a thyroid gland disorder that can cause irrational and violent behavior, and manic depression.
I had Graves' disease myself, and I had some depression, but depression doesn't make people go out and kill people, so I think that's just reaching for straws there.
They also argued, and this is probably the most ludicrous defense ever given for Schmitz, and that is the gay panic defense. Yes, this was a thing. There are legal techniques commonly used in court regarding violent actions toward anyone of the LGBTQ, PQ, PQ, HIJK, MNOPQ community. That is a joke. I didn't make it as a way to insult or make fun of everyone of the LGBT community. I primarily use this joke as a way of seeing how the LGBT community is cramming in so many fucking acronyms in its community to be more inclusive. In November 12, 1996, Jonathan Schmitz was found guilty of second-degree murder. On December 4th, 1996, he was sentenced to 25/50 years sentence behind bars. Now, you would think that after that case, everything would be good, right? Guy murders an acquaintance who has a crush on him. Open shut case. Nah. The Amateurs weren't quite satisfied and decided to take things a step further. They were going to sue the Jenny Jones show. Go big or go fucking home. Yes, the Amateurs decided to go to court again to sue the Jenny Jones show, Telepictures, and Warner Bros. For the ambush tactics as well as gross negligence. Now, just like the title of this segment, yes, this was in fact a David and Goliath story, because this was a typical working middle-class American family going after a tabloid talk show that was a property of one of the biggest entertainment companies of the world, Warner Bros. Holy shit! So the Amateurs confided in one man to do the job, and that man was Geoffrey Fieger.
It isn't hard to offer somebody, a young, impressionable person, the opportunity to appear on national television, to express a secret crush, something that he doesn't feel necessarily bad about. He doesn't understand the dangers.
Feiger was a Michigan attorney based in Southfield, where his practice focused on personal injury, civil rights legislation, and medical malpractice cases. And this case was one of the cases that he was well known for. During the trial, they used the unaired episode as evidence towards Jones and the producers. Jones testified an oath that the producers told Schmitz that his admirer could be a man or a woman, but Schmitz thought that it was his fiancée that split with him before that episode getting back together with him. She was quoted saying this:
ambushed him. If I heard that word ambush one more time, I want to just scream because I knew that it wasn't.
Kind of ironic given how you were born through post-World War II, seeing the trauma of your mom and dad's violence in the household, moving from Palestine to Italy to eventually Canada, where you had to grow through a strict Catholic upbringing, seeing more of your chaotic, strict Catholic, alcoholic backgrounds. Like Jenny, with all your experiences growing up, what you've experienced, when you have something that all humans have, which is empathy. In 1999, surprisingly, the amateurs won the case, winning over a $29 million settlement. Now that was huge. That was absolutely huge. But a Shyamalan twist happened. It's always a Shyamalan twist with all these cases. The order was overturned. So in the end, it was pointless. But the most fucked up thing was that Jenny Jones later continued on with her show. Can you imagine? Can you fucking imagine? But in a bit of karma, which we will get to later, the show's ratings would slowly drop. So, just like with my LA Riots episode and my Lords of Chaos episode, this is the part of this episode where we ask the question here: where are they now? Scott Amador was buried in Ottawa Park Cemetery in Oakland County, Michigan. As for Jonathan Schmitz, he was released from his 25-50-year sentence in August 2017 for good behavior. Frank, Scott's brother, was quoted saying, "I'd like to know that he learned something, that he is a changed man, is no longer homophobic, and has gotten physiological care." Feiger stated that Schmitz has kept a low profile and still lives in Michigan. He also states that Frank spotted Jonathan one time in public, but no altercation happened. And as for Jenny Jones, her show ran for 12 more seasons, and with the ratings plummeting due to the controversy, as Jerry being, well, Jerry Springer, the Jenny Jones show put its hat up in May 21st, 2003. So, what is Jenny Jones doing right now? You'll be absolutely surprised here, people, that Jenny Jones has a YouTube channel.
Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. Chow time, baby. Just look, there is nothing like homemade stew. You couldn't buy this anywhere.
And the YouTube channel is called Jenny Can Cook, where she cooks simple recipes at the comfort of her home, which has reached over 1.12 million subscribers. Now that's really great that Jenny is doing something that does not include exploitation. But if you guys really want a really awesome and better cooking channel, please subscribe to Sue Hulk. And by the way, Sue, congratulations on the new baby. You and Dake are gonna be amazing parents. The Jenny Jones show murder was one of the most famous, if not infamous, scandals of television of all time. But this actually really did change the way that these tabloid talk shows operated. Where before they did not have any mental evaluations or actually let legit real people be ambushed and exploited, to where most, if not all, tabloid talk shows were scripted. Like, let's all be formal here, people. Like, the stuff that happens on Jerry Springer and Maury Povich, it's all completely like amped up and hyped up and shit. It's just, I mean, when you see all the people freak out on the paternity test on Maury, it's like, why do people think it's absolutely real? It's just made to hype up on the ratings and shit.
Dirty sperm stealer. That's right, a true
semen demon. You are not.
But we can all agree that shows like those two, amongst others, and Jenny Jones were all exploitive. The few times where I got to see snippets of Jerry Springer and Maury was enough for me back in those days to convince me that yes, this is quality entertainment for white trash. But before I will pull a Finn McKenzie and say, what caused the immediate death of tabloid talk shows? Well, I think we all know the culprit. It's social media. Think about it. Why wait for an episode of Jerry Springer when not only you could watch Jerry Springer's episode of Gigi Allen on YouTube, you can watch weird shit like this!
I am Thompson and we need some real ass.
Real ass!
Come on.
Or this!
Message to all y'all broke ass haters. Y'all ain't doing it like Lil Tay. This is why all y'all fucking haters hate me, bitch.
Or this!
Let's get her done! Oh! 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 It busted a ball!
Or even, my favorite, this.
You ain't gonna hop out your car, nigga. That's the stupidest thing you can do, nigga. You hop out your car, nigga. What the fuck, nigga? You hop out your car, bitch. Let me get that shit, nigga. You hop out your motherfucking car, nigga. Let me get that shit. What you gonna hop out your car for, nigga? The boom gang, you don't never know, nigga. You got buck, bitch. Fuck you talking about, nigga? Boom gang, a whole lot of gang shit, nigga. That's how you do that shit, nigga. And I'm riding in the whip, nigga. What you mean? What you mean? He got out the car. What you mean, boom gang, a whole lot of gang shit?
I keep a beam up on that Draco, so but it ain't hard to seek ya. I don't chase these hoes, I throw that nigga.
Boom gang, whole lot of gang shit. Social media in many ways actually became the death of tabloid talk shows. Talk shows were all dying left and right. Geraldo Rivera would pursue his career to American political commentary.
This has nothing to do with that
want anarchy.
mayor.
You want
nothing to do with that mayor.
You want anarchy.
No, what I want open border anarchy. What I want is fairness. We have lured these people. We have lured these people. We have lured these people to this country.
Even the mighty Jerry Springer called it quits on July 26, 2018. Yet you still have shows like Maury.
You are not the father.
I told you!
Go! Keep on with it! Keep on with it! Come on! Get to it! There it is! What the hell? Get your ass! What are you doing? It's too quick. Get your ass up out.
Steve Wilkos.
And you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to do that to you. That's what I'd like to do. Yeah, I'd like to do you do that one.
And of course, Dr. Phil.
So the audience are a bunch of hoes.
Yeah. Check me outside. How about that?
Back in the day, people like myself included that shows like Maury, Jenny, Geraldo, Montel, and Jerry were one of the many reasons why people were getting ignorant and dumber. But we failed to realize that people have always seen ignorance since the start of human civilization. We just brought it forth on TV to watch fringe people in our society go at each other like wild monkeys. And social media took what tabloid talk shows done and brought it forth on the entire internet. But Atticus the Death Metaler, there was another case like that of Jenny on the Jerry Springer show. Why didn't you mention that? Well, yeah, I will admit, I didn't talk about that on Jerry Springer because, well, Jenny Jones's was a lot more infamous and, well, Jerry Springer is just the most well-known tabloid talk show host. Let's all be for real over here. He is the GOAT out of all these motherfuckers. But what can we all learn from the Jenny Jones murder? Well, we can all learn that it's all fun and games trying to reach for those ratings until someone gets humiliated and starts shooting. So, what you guys think about the Jenny Jones murder? Did you actually watch it? Did you watch the trials by media on Netflix? Are you familiar with what happened on the news back in the 90s? Do you live close in where Scott Amadur's parents and folks live and Jonathan Schmitz lives at? Leave it all down on the comments below. And just like with every other The Death Metal Historian episode, I have a Discord server, which if you follow me on Instagram, I put out my story on my Instagram of like how to get on my Discord. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, please do. And also watch my stories so that in hopes that you can actually follow the steps into getting on my Discord so that we can actually talk more about the Death Metal Historian, do voice chats, have fun, bring out dank-ass memes, all that. And I hope to see you all there, and stay tuned for more videos. Without further ado, ladies and gents, I am Atticus the Death Mailer. Hope you liked this video. Subscribe to my channel. Links are down in the description below. Keep it metal. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Have an excellent and blessed day, everyone. Skål.